Hello, and welcome back to Theo's Coffee Break podcast, the podcast where we talk about what's going on in our world while getting to know each other on a deeper, more personal level. I'm your host, Theo, and today's episode is one I am really excited about. We're diving into themes of identity, storytelling, faith, and poetry, and how all of those can live and breathe together in a single life. Joining me here at the coffee table today is my friend Alexis Stark, a journalist, poet, educator, and West Michigan creative who's using her voice in powerful ways. She's a public education reporter, a teaching artist at the Diatribe, and the author of 2 poetry collections, including her forthcoming book, The Sound of Honey Falling. Alexis is also someone who brings a unique and much needed perspective to the conversation, living at the intersection of queerness and Christianity, art and activism, curiosity and compassion. Alexis, welcome to the coffee table. I'm so glad to have you here.
Hi, Theo. You made me sound so cool. It's odd that it's when I write things and I'm writing about myself and others, like it's so easy to compile other people's accolades and the things that they've done. And then anytime I'm asked to do it, it's like, oh, I have to do that for myself. But yeah, it feels nice to hear that, oh, I've done some things in my life that I'm proud of.
Some things, and I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you, Theo.
Yes,
I appreciate you.
Of course. And I think that is like, I don't know if that's like a creatives thing or just a people's thing, but like it tends to be really hard to like humble brag about yourself, but it's one of the requirements.
I know. And especially when you're taught in journalism that you are the vessel to tell the story and that your name is on it, but it's not always your story. To then do something with your name on it that is your story, and to talk about it and to have an author's bio and to, write about yourself in the way that's going to introduce your work to other people. Yeah. What do I say? I don't know. I'm not used to doing this. So,
well, ask me and I can help you.
Thank you, Theo. Yes, I did have to. I mean, it starts with almost like looking at my resume, and I'm like, what have I done? How can I write this? And then, to make it sound good, to make it sound. So I look at a lot of other people's bios, honestly, and I go to people that have written ones that I really like, and I say, how did you sit down and write about yourself?
Yeah, so. I love that. And that's actually a really good tip in case anyone's out there working on a resume.
Yes.
That's where you start.
Yes.
So, Alexis, for those that are just getting to know you here at our coffee table, how do you usually describe what you do and what you love about it?
Yeah. I found a good way of describing what I do is I am a journalist by day and a poet by night. I wouldn't say I'm a night owl, but I say that that's the job I go to after the job. And so I went to school to become a journalist. That was my first internship, my first part-time, full-time job, has been in journalism. Yeah. And always on the side has been poetry. So writing, I'd say professional writer is usually the term I use to describe everything, like the umbrella term. And then I say, I'm an education reporter for my day job. And then anytime I'm doing anything in the community or through the Diatribe or when I'm working on my books, my work, I say I am a poet. But it took a lot longer to kind of adopt that title because it wasn't my full-time job, doing my air quotes for those who can't see. And so that's kind of how I, in a longer way to describe professional writing, I say that there's the creative side, that's like the personal side of it. And then there's the work side that I still enjoy and is, I'm very passionate about that as well. But it's the stuff that I get paid for more often than the personal projects.
I would have never thought about writing being like, there's 2 sides. I would just think that it would be all creative, but you're right.
Yeah. Well, and journalism writing is creative, but there's a lot of creative writing that is stripped out of it because you're there to convey a story and to, tell somebody's narrative, but you're doing it in a way that's factual and evidence-based. And okay, if someone's reading this in 30 seconds, they need to be able to get the point and get the information. And thankfully in education reporting, there's a lot more room for storytelling, because we're writing about kids, we're writing about students, we're writing about
Yeah.
teachers, and we want to showcase the things that they're excited about. And so I can play a little bit more. A couple times I've floated a few lines in there that sound more poetic than others. But
Oh my gosh.
it takes a lot more restraint, I think, to write. But then it's kind of nice too,
Yeah.
because that's like I turn that on for when I'm working. And then when I'm writing more creatively, or I'm writing poetry, then it's like I can let all the creativity go, and
Yeah.
there's no rules.
Yeah, to which your poetry this morning at the assembly
Oh, thank you.
at Greenville Public Schools was definitely so moving.
Thank you.
And it's really cool. It's really cool to hear people's writings, because then
Mm-hmm.
you realize that there's definitely more depth there.
Yeah.
So, but that's not where we met. We initially met with the diatribe at the Mocha event.
Mm-hmm.
So how has collaborating and being a part of those spaces shape your experience here in the Grand Rapids community as a West Michigan creative?
Oh my gosh, it's the birthplace of it. I don't know. I don't want to give like entire credit to one organization, but I truly owe the diatribe a lot of gratitude and a lot of love, because when I first moved to West Michigan, I am from the east side of the state originally, and I was super involved in my community, but not in a lot of creative ways, more academic ways, I would say, through school, through my interest there, and then got into the poetry scene a little bit in college. But it was, just that bubble, I think. So when I was here, I had all this, I had writing, I had these skills, I had this in my back pocket, and I started going to shows, hosted by the diatribe, hosted by people who worked for the diatribe or were just known with the diatribe. And I really enjoyed the people I was meeting and the things I was hearing. Oh my gosh, talk about poetry that blows your mind and, makes you stand out of your seat. So at one point when they did an open call on social media for teaching artists, I thought, could I do that? Like, is that something I could get involved in? And ever since then, like, it's completely taken off. Like, it took an organization of people to just give me not only like a physical spot in a classroom to be and to teach, but then the confidence that I've built, the energy that I get from, you've been in those assemblies, like you've been in those, I feel like a different poet, a different person than I was when I first started. And I actually feel like I can embody what it means to be a poet because they've told me I am. Like, they've called me a poet. They've said, here's a space, here is a mic. We want you to go read your stuff. And I know that, like, I write well.
Right.
And I know that I have the work to deliver. But then, it took an organization rooted in the community and in youth and in people saying, we believe in you, here's a space, and inviting me in that made me feel so comfortable to do it.
Well, and you're also in front of an audience like with Mocha and Greenville. Yes. Like, it's like those are people that are not familiar with poetry spaces, or maybe they visited one or two shows. Mm-hmm. And so you really feel like you're being thrown to the wolves there, because it's like, are they going to pick up what I'm putting down, or is it going to go right over their head?
A lot of room reading. Sometimes there is a prompt, like with that assembly, they said, hey, the theme is mental health. Great. Let me go through my work and see what has to do with mental health. But even then it's like, okay, I'm talking to high schoolers. I'm not talking to adults. And then, with a room full of adults, you're like, okay, what could be their lived experience? Yeah. Am I going to offend anybody? Thankfully, I don't think most of my work has anything that would be super offensive, but it's something you think about. And it's like, okay, not only how am I going to look and sound, but are they gonna pick up what I'm putting down? Are they gonna understand my humor, my pauses, all that intentionality that I put into the writing? So thankfully, I think with my journalism background, I can do a little room reading. Like, okay, who are the people here? What's the vibe? I always check, like when I go to an open mic, I never decide what I'm going to read beforehand.
Really?
Because if I have options, but I even just last night, I went to a reading and I had a plan of what I was going to read, and I got there and the people that were there were not what I expected, and it wasn't the same crowd, I guess, that was normally there. And I go, oh, I think I have to pivot. Like, I think I have to pick something else, because I could have read whatever I wanted, but I thought that other poems would maybe be more at home there. Other people, they would respond better to different subject matter. So thankfully, now that I have books, I have tangible things that I can just bring with me, that I have options. So it's not like, oh, I only have this one poem and that's all I have. But yeah, it takes a little bit of reading the situation and deciding what might land best with who's there.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll definitely talk about your books later. But as you just mentioned, you've been a journalist for several years now. So what role does storytelling play in your life, both as a writer and as a person?
I love that question. When I was coming up in school, and even as a kid, my dad was a journalist, and the theme was always, or the thing you were always told was, journalism is a dying art. It's a dying career path.
Really?
Because print has moved, 10 years ago moved away. I think we're moving maybe towards a little bit more the nostalgia of print now, but it was all digital. Everything was digital, and there was that lull between what does journalism look like in the space between print and digital. And now, I mean, between social media and magazines and websites, we have so much digital content. And so it really gave me the space to say, okay, well, I'm entering this field that I have the rules for, but how am I going to define myself? And I've always been a storyteller. I mean, that was my favorite thing to do as a kid, was to read fairy tales and then write my own versions.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
I love doing that. I love to read. So anytime I would read something and get super lost in the story, I would want it to continue. And books don't always do that. So I had to continue it myself. So I've always been a very creative, in my own world, in my own head person. So when it came to more professional styles of writing, you got to come out of the clouds a little bit. But the writing part I was still good at. So it was like, okay, somebody else is giving me their version of, of what their life story is. And it may not be a fairy tale, but it's their story. So how can you rewrite it? How can you tell it based on, the notes that you take and the stories that you hear? And how do you translate that into, because not everyone can write well. I always people tell me like, oh, I couldn't write anything. I can't write an email, let alone a story. Yeah. And I write several stories a week. So it's, people trust you with the things that they're sharing, and whether it's their life story or just what they did at school that day, and being able to capture the essence of what the person is like, what that school is like, just capturing a person's story and then taking it into the written word. I love seeing people's stories appear on the page, and it's like, I wrote that. Like, they told me their story. It's their story. It's their life. Yeah. But I wrote it. I put it on paper.
It's like magic, because you're almost like, not to be like too serious, but you're immortalizing a part of their life that is going to live on with you and how you write. That's what a gift and honor, to be honest. It's a true privilege.
I do believe that people have their innate gifts, and there are things that we love and there are things that we're good at and the things that we can better ourselves at. But I've always said, I don't know what else I would do, because writing is the only thing I'm good at. It's not true. I know I'm good at a lot of things, but that is the thing that has come easily to me. And when it does, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I was meant to do. So how can I, not only make a living, but make a life out of this? And storytelling is something I always come back to.
So just out of curiosity, because you're doing this for a living. Where did you get your education? Like, what school did you go to? Like, how'd you make this professional?
So that was a huge part of it. So like I said, being, brought up in this world that doesn't believe in true journalism anymore. I went to Michigan State University. Go green, go white. I was very excited to be there in one of their residential colleges. They focused on arts and humanities was the focus. And so there was a lot of creative writing. There was a lot of essay writing. And about a year in, I found out they had a school of journalism. And I thought, well, clearly there must be a future here if there's a whole college within the university dedicated to this. So I started taking classes, and I never completed the major in journalism.
Really?
I was a few classes shy, which I keep that to myself sometimes, because everyone's like, oh, you went to school for journalism. I'm like, oh, well, don't look at the piece of paper. But I took so much coursework and got to know the professors and built those relationships that I wrote for the state news, because I had a professor, recommend me, write me a letter of recommendation for that job, which is the independent paper run by campus students, by Michigan State students. And yeah, through those opportunities, I was able to get that technical experience. And I had a professor tell me once, you could take more classes, you could stay here an extra year, get that major in journalism, and miss out on a year's worth of experience you could be getting out in the job market, out in the real world. And that's where you're really going to grow as a writer. You can only learn so much in a classroom. You can only learn so much for books. So I actually, while I was working for the State News, there was a recruiter that came for MLive and was interviewing people. And it was my senior year. And I thought, MLive's the biggest paper in the state.
Yeah.
Like, that's where I need to go. And I interviewed with them, and that's how I ended up getting my first job out of college at Ann Arbor News.
Oh my gosh.
And I wanted to go to Grand Rapids so badly, but they were like, we're not hiring there, but we are hiring in Ann Arbor. And I grew up on the east side. So I said, you know what, I'll start there. And so that was what kickstarted my career, was being at the right school at the right time, but then having access to those opportunities and having the skills built up from really talented professors, from a critically acclaimed, awarded paper run by some pretty amazing people. And then, getting that opportunity to go big and write for, a really trusted news organization in the state of Michigan.
And the value in connections, right? And knowing how to have good conversations.
Yes.
That's something that we're all about here at Theo's Coffee Break, is that really getting to know, your mentors and professors and people who have those lived experiences. It can take you places that you really wouldn't have dreamed of for yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a beautiful example of that.
Yeah. If you would have asked me when I started off in school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew what I was good at, and I knew what I liked. But I had no idea what a career path looked like, much less one in journalism. And the more kind of pieces to the puzzle I got, the more it unlocked. And then I was realizing, more opportunities were coming, and I was meeting more people. Obviously, you meet tons of people while being a reporter.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have ended up in Grand Rapids if I didn't start in Lansing, go to Ann Arbor, and then end up out here.
That is so beautiful. And it really speaks to that West Michigan did create you.
Yeah.
So speaking of inspiration and just, those curveballs.
Yeah.
What inspired your upcoming book, The Sound of Honey Falling? Which, by the way, I love the title.
Thank you.
It's really beautiful. But what themes do you explore in your book, The Sound of Honey, that is coming out here soon?
So it was almost completed in 2023.
Really?
Yes. So there was this poetry prize I really wanted to go for at Wheelbarrow Book Press at Michigan State. And I thought, how cool would that be to be published by my alma mater? So my first book came out in 2021. And of course, I immediately started working on another one.
Yeah.
But this one had to be full length. So my first book was a chapbook, which is about 20 to 30 pages, poems, in a shorter collection. This had to be a full length collection, which is about 64 pages or more.
Wow.
So I had a long way to go. I had work that I had done, and it started of just, let's write as much as we can. So not really a theme in mind. And then eventually there kind of started emerging the patterns of change and life transitions, navigating grief and loss. So there was a lot of downer stuff, a lot of sad things.
Yeah.
And then a lot of joyful things started happening in my life, which I didn't know how to write about at first. So we had to kind of practice that. So then when it finally came together, I actually submitted it 2 days before my wedding. I needed it done that week. So I said, I'm going to submit it. I'm going to let it go. And unfortunately, I didn't end up getting selected for that. So I thought, okay, well, it's done. I still want it to go somewhere. And I sat on it for a while because I didn't really know what to do with it. I didn't know if I wanted to find another publisher. I didn't know if I wanted to self-publish. And so over the next year, I added some poems. I took some out. I was writing happier things. So I thought it was a good balance of the two. And now in its final form, it has 3 sections, I guess. So The Sound of Honey Falling is the title. I have Falling Apart is the first section. So I kind of put all the sad things together. And then there's Falling Out. So changes in living places, relationships, jobs. And then, so kind of the growth happens there.
Yeah.
And then Falling in Love is the last section. So I kind of kept those 3 themes. And as I kept sitting on it longer, more was happening in my life. So I'm really grateful that I had that extra time to add to it, to make it what it is today. And it was, shocker, the diatribe that really inspired me, the people I work with there, to self-publish. And that's what I ended up doing. And I really wish I could tell you, I've been racking my brain all week, Theo, to figure out when I came up with the title. There is a poem in there called Honey. It was called Honey at first, because it explored the sound of the word, like how people use it to describe how it can be used sarcastically, but then how it can be, like when someone says, oh, honey,
right.
The tone of it versus like an endearing tone. And I think I imagined the visual of, honey is a very thick substance. And when it drips off of stuff, it's a very slow fall. It's a very slow drip. And everything kind of happened very slowly but gradually, I feel like, in my life. Like, it felt like things were taking forever, moving like molasses is, how they say. But then when it did all come together, it was really beautiful and it was really sweet, like honey. So I thought that evoked some good imagery, some good sound words, some good sight, how we talk with students, writing with imagery, with your senses in mind. And then, the 3 themes kind of emerged, which was a nice way to organize the book too and keep that theme all tied together.
Yeah. This might be a dumb question, but do you know what the sound of honey actually sounds like? I mean, because I can't imagine it.
So I've thought of it in 2 different ways. I've thought of it in like being made. And so I'm imagining, because there are some honeybee visuals in the poem. And I've thought about like what it must sound like inside of a hive, like while the bees are making the honey, and like what that sounds like.
Yeah.
So that's more of like the process. And then, I mean, I've half thought just to go like pour some honey out on the counter one day and just be like, does it sound like anything?
Yeah.
So that it's a bit of a stretch. My dad even read it and was like, what does this mean? What is honey doesn't make a sound.
But there's something so beautiful about it though, because it's kind of like the way you just described your whole process. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of internal decisions. Yeah. And in a lot of ways, it is kind of you moving silent and making those decisions. So in a way, it's like you are the sound of honey falling.
Thank you for bringing even more meaning to that title.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited to have you here. So I'm going to be diving into some more deeper personal questions.
Yeah.
Alexis, as someone who is both queer and Christian, how has your relationship with faith and identity evolved over time?
Yeah. So that is probably a little bit easier to answer now than it might have been at a different point in my life. But I was raised in the church. When I was younger, we would go pretty consistently. I went to the church that my great grandmother went to when she came to the U.S. from Scotland. Okay. So that's where my mom's side of the family is from. It was the family church. It's where she went. It's where my parents got married. It's where I was baptized. Like, this was the family church, and it's beautiful. It's on the east side of the state. It's very castle-like almost. I always thought it looked like a castle when I was a kid. Very classic-looking church in a very wealthy part of the area. So we grew up going there, and I have great memories of that church, but I don't remember the people. We didn't live in the area. We were about 45 minutes away.
Okay.
So there was never a community that was cultivated around going to church. It was something that my family did. We would do it Sunday morning, and then we'd come home, and then we wouldn't go back until the next week. And then as I got older and I went away to college, then I was only going, on Christmas when I was home. And eventually, when my younger sister and I started going to school, we were I was out of school, she was in school. My parents didn't want to go alone.
Yeah.
And so they tried to find other communities, other churches. And so they were trying to keep their place and find that community, but we really never did. So when I went to college, I did not have what I would consider a faith community. I had my personal faith that I think I carried just privately. I went to school with a lot of liberal, politically minded people, and there's not a lot of space for religion in that conversation. Often I felt like I'd be ostracized if I did come out as a Christian in my classes, and I was okay with that because I was so focused on the conversations that I was having with people and the identities that I was cultivating, because I did not come into my sexuality really until college. Because that was where people were talking about it.
Yeah.
And we actually had a GSA at my high school, the old school GSA title. I think they call it something different now.
Yeah.
But it was the Gay Straight Alliance at the time. And one of my best friends and I ran it after school. And he was very out and proud. Like, he had been out since freshman year, very comfortable with his sexuality. And I had always just assumed I was an ally. Like, that was always the title I carried. And it wasn't until I was around a bunch of people where, like, being straight was not the norm that I kind of realized, like, oh, maybe my ideas and maybe my personal desires don't relate to that. Like, maybe I am more similar to the people in the community that I have loved and supported for so many years.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there, I eventually kind of came to I don't want to say label, because that means it's stuck on you and you can't take it off. But I came into a community of bisexuality because I had people share their stories with me about, I wasn't really this and I wasn't really that. And I kind of fit in this middle ground space. And then it was really cool to see, like, when pansexual came around and, like, as more people were identifying different ways, and it's like, oh, there are options for people, it's not just gay and straight, we have this whole community and ways. So once I kind of accepted that about myself, I was like, okay, I have this community now. And I was still lacking in a faith community. Like, it was still there.
Yeah.
But I think there's that ever-present wondering of, with a faith and with a belief that is so quick to judge and quick to condemn people who are a part of the LGBTQ plus community, how do you reconcile the two? I think that's the biggest question any queer Christian asks themselves. And it was much easier to shun the religious side. That's hateful. That's judgment and scrutiny. Why would I want to believe in something like that when I could believe in this community, in love and acceptance?
Yes.
And it took a long time to find a group of Christians who also believed that, and to marry the two. And so I kind of did that myself in my own head. Like, I had my own relationship with faith and with prayer and with God, but I didn't think it could exist outside of my head, if that makes sense. Like, I didn't. Yeah. And it wasn't until I came to West Michigan and sought out a church on my own that I saw churches with pride flags outside, and who, were open and affirming in their ministry and in their who they put in pastoral leadership, and the groups that they have and the communities that they welcome into their congregations. And then it was like, oh, they both can exist in the same place. And then I started meeting more people who were, devout, active Christians in their churches and in their communities who were also openly queer. And it was like, oh, okay. So I just wasn't finding the right spaces where these two can coexist. It's possible. And I feel like I've educated myself a lot more about just scripture and what people are teaching, because I've heard all of the negative and the hateful, that I'm like, okay, there's got to be love in here. There's got to be reasons.
Yes.
And I'm really thankful to have a lot of friends who got masters in divinity so that I didn't have to, and who could sit with me and give me good readings and good teachings. And I've had really supportive pastors that have said, hey, we're looking at the scripture that was written in another language thousands and thousands of years ago by so many different people. And this book that we love and as a country is dare I say, idolize the Bible,
Yeah.
how so many people can be looking at it and reading it and getting something different out of it.
Yeah.
And so when I finally, met those people and made those connections in that community, like we talked about, I think that's when it finally started to settle in that both can exist in a really cool intersectional space.
Yeah. Yeah, Alexis, and what you just said is a really beautiful example of like what a mirrored reality looks like your internal world with the external world. And it kind of goes to show that if you really look for what you want to see, or like you really choose to see what you want to see, you're going to find it out there.
Yeah.
It's until you make that decision to overcome that obstacle within yourself. So, thank you so much for sharing that, because that's such a beautiful thing. That's one of my personal struggles as well, as a queer and Christian, in finding more of that and seeing that visibility.
Yeah.
Gosh, representation.
Oh, I know.
So much.
And it's so lacking.
Yeah. So what has been the most healing or the most challenging part of living between these two worlds? Church and queer community, but also I am curious to know between poetry and professional journalism as well. If you can find a way to marry the two, but no pressure.
All right, yeah, I'll make it there. I can tie anything together. So I think that finding like-minded people for sure helped me see the ways in which I could be myself, and then also have my own beliefs. And meeting people who were existing as open queer people in churches and in youth groups and in community spaces, that representation was visible and I could see it, and it was respected and it was loved. And I immediately felt comfortable. And so that was really healing, because it was not something that someone had to hide. It was not something that was, don't ask, don't tell. It wasn't something that was like secret to them, but no one else talked about it. And sometimes that's still the case, depending on, who you're talking to, or, I haven't been to every church in West Michigan. Good golly, there are so many. I guarantee that is not the case on every doorstep. But that was really healing, to see people living their teachings and to see female queer pastors up at the pulpit reading scripture, speaking their sermons, and recognizing how all of people are represented in scripture, and how God sees all people, and how nuanced that can be when we're interpreting it, and even deeper into, gender roles in the Bible, and job expectations and family expectations. And once you start unraveling all of that, like, what does any of it really mean? Right. And what was the original intent behind anything? Yeah. We never know. We'll never know. I stand by that, that we were not there when it was written, and we are reading thousands of year old interpretations. And I don't want to say that means nothing, because then where would the meaning be? Of course that means something. It's the foundation of an entire belief system, but we have to make space for humanity and what that interpretation could mean over time, and how language evolves. Oh, I could go into a whole thing about how language evolves itself. And that is the challenge, is finding your own comfort in the space, but then making peace with that not everyone's going to meet you in that comfortable space. I have very devout Christians in my life that do not recognize very varied forms of identity outside of the norm, or think that it's a sin, or that different forms of sexuality should be kept to yourself, not talked about. Like, it's okay if you're like that, but if you act on it, it's a sin. And so navigating, loved ones thinking that, and knowing that you're not fully accepted in their eyes, but you're still loved, and kind of deciding whether or not that's enough. Yeah. And then also your queer people and your friends who are living their best, proudest, most beautiful life, and who don't believe the same things you believe. Yeah. And I like to think that as a journalist, I'm a very varied perspective person. I think if that's a phrase, I like to see all sides of people and of arguments and of stories. You know, for every one person you interview, there's 12 other people that could be telling the same story. That goes with a lot of things. And being able to walk into a space and know who you are and know what you stand for and what you bring into a room, and deciding whether or not it's you're willing to be uncomfortable or comfortable with who's around you. So I think
I love that.
Yeah, because that is a challenge. No one wants to be uncomfortable. No one wants to be in a space where they don't feel welcomed.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes that's your living room. Sometimes it's the Thanksgiving table.
Oh my God.
And
yes,
you have to decide, is it worth it to not be there?
Yeah.
Or is it more important that you are with your family at Thanksgiving and there's just some things you don't talk about, or there's just some things that maybe you leave at the door and you pick up on your way out? And I think that a lot of my friend group, even, we're all on the same page with a lot of things, that there are things that we can be in certain spaces and we're okay with that. That, like, you carry your identity with you wherever you go. That doesn't have to change.
Yeah.
But you can be selective about who you open up to and who you share that with based on what your level of safety is and your level of comfort. And it's not, it's a privilege to be able to be open in yourself all the time.
Absolutely.
And I'm really happy for people that feel like they can do that. And there are spaces that I can do that. Sitting here at your coffee table.
Absolutely.
I feel like I am safe. I am open. I am free to be who I am.
That's what we do here.
Thank you for creating that space for people, because
course.
I don't think we have enough of them.
Yeah.
And no one's here to talk back to me or to tell me to stop talking. Once this goes out, maybe that's a little bit different. But yeah, that's I think that is how it all comes together, is even in my workplace. How much do I want to reveal to people? One thing that I love to do when I'm interviewing somebody and I see a part of their identity that I relate to, whether it's a part of the conversation or not, I always try to find that point of connection.
Yeah.
Do we support the same sports teams? Are we both Christian? I see you have a pride flag hanging in your office, how to make that connection. And if it's not there, it's not there. And sometimes I've interviewed Ivanka Trump. I've interviewed people that I don't share similar beliefs with. And sometimes that's the job. But that is also a beautiful thing with poetry, is it goes back to that internal version of yourself.
Yeah.
Where you can be whoever you want to be, and you can write about whatever, and no one has to see it. We tell our students, write things in your notebook because that's yours and nobody has to look at that. But you can share it if you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. What you just shared is such a beautiful embodiment of practicing discernment and courage to find a way to speak a narrative that is riding a fine line of middle ground.
Yeah.
And not everybody is able to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that this is something that I have been learning to do.
Yeah.
And you feel like you're juggling a lot of perspectives.
Yes.
You're juggling a lot of feelings, but also it's like you don't want to sacrifice your authenticity.
Right.
But you also don't want to push people away.
Yeah. And sometimes they need to get pushed away. Sometimes they need to get pushed right out of there.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people in my life that I would never want to be out of my life and of my circle.
And that's why you do it so beautifully. I just want to say that.
Thank you.
Because, gosh, there is really no other way to say what you just said.
I'm glad I said it because I don't remember what I said.
That's okay. So when did you first begin writing poetry, and what did it offer you that other forms of expression didn't?
That's a great question. I like to say that I started writing poetry when I was in elementary school, back when I thought it had to rhyme, and writing that ABCB scheme of every other line has a word that rhymes, and I would come up with fun stories, same thing, fantasy fairy tales. I would write little rhymes and things. But it never really felt like my story. It almost felt like I was just retelling things that I had read about, or just words that sounded good. And then anytime in an English class, whether that be elementary, middle, high school, there'd always be some kind of a poetry unit. And I remember never really connecting with the poets we read about or the poems that we read. There was a lot of nature. There was a lot of, and now I love Walt Whitman, but like reading Walt Whitman in high school was not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of, in the diatribe, we kind of refer to them as the old dead white guys. A lot of poems, and it wasn't until I was in high school, I think I was a sophomore or junior, and we read the Beat Poets from the 1960s. And I read a poem on one of Allen Ginsberg's, and it wasn't in rhyme format. It wasn't really even in any format. Like, it was so free verse. And I was like, oh, this is poetry? Like,
what makes it poetry then?
That's a really good question. I like to think it's intentional organization of words. So there is some thought to style, whether or not you're purposely rhyming or not. But I'd like to think that the rules are that you get to make your own rules. And I don't want that to sound so vague as like, people can say, oh, well, anyone can be a poet. Well, yeah, I think so, because musicians are poets.
Yeah.
And I would argue that there's a lot of public speakers that speak well enough to be poets. Yeah. I think Barack Obama sometimes sounds like a poet with, how eloquently he speaks.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not one to say in a textbook, look up this definition of a poem and this is what's going to be there. But I think it's when the intention is there from the writer to shift from, I'm no longer writing an essay. I'm no longer writing a short story. Like, I am writing a poem. And then to go beyond that, beyond the written word, there's the performance of it as well. And
didn't even think about that.
Yeah. So like, we talk about spoken word poetry, and that I think is a little bit more tangible and recognizable as I am reading a poem. I am reading something that is, not to use the word in the definition, but is poetic, is theatrical, is about me, is a story that I'm telling in a way that sounds good.
Yeah.
And then you can really dive into the language and the structure and the poetic techniques of imagery and personification and metaphors and all those things that we learn about in English class. So there's a little bit of that. There's a little bit of rules and a little bit of structure. I don't want to completely throw that to the wind because some of those make the best poems. Right. But I think a lot of it comes from taking that all in, like learning the playbook and then putting it away, like not looking at it again, but just trusting. You talk about instincts and like trusting what you know to be good writing and what, and I think once you do that, then the rest of it comes from you. It's your stories that you're telling. It's your sights and sounds in nature. When you go on a nature walk and it's like, oh, write a poem about a bird or write a poem about a leaf. I don't know what that's going to look like or how to tell you, like, this is exactly how a poem should be. Yeah. But you know it when you hear it, and you know it when you read it, that you're like, oh, this is beautiful. Like somebody took the time to cultivate this collection of words and sounds, and it sounds nice.
I feel like you're in my head.
Great.
As a songwriter, like, truthfully, like,
I could ask you the same. How do you write a song? What is songwriting? And I would imagine it's a very similar process.
Pretty similar, but like, for me, I really think it's in how you're conveying the message and the intention and perspective.
The intention. Yep.
But then the fun part is I like to call this coloring. And this is where you get to define, like, I don't really want to say that my music is fit into a specific genre because I really go off of like the world I'm trying to create. But it's like, no one else can do this. I'm inviting you into my world. Yeah. And we have rules, but we also like to play and have fun.
I like
and
that.
Color.
I like that coloring. You're coloring and you can choose to color in the lines, outside the lines. Yeah. And that's maybe what kind of influences our teaching style with the diatribe when we go into classrooms and work with students. We give them the lines, the picture, the coloring page, if you will, if we're going to riff on this metaphor. And we say, okay, here's what you have to work with. We give them the crayons, we give them the paper, and then kind of give them the freedom to say, okay, you can color if it makes the most sense to you to color inside the lines, rhyme away. Yeah. Follow this exact structure that we've laid out for you. If that's how you feel, you can tell your story and deliver the art, go for it. And then there's the kids that draw outside the lines. Yeah. And that come up with something absolutely beautiful and wild, and you're like, where did that come from out of a fifth grader? You know, what experiences have they had? But that's really cool when it happens, and that's when I think the lifelong love of poetry is born, because it's not always from sitting in the classroom reading the textbook poems. Like reading poems is lovely. I love taking a nice collection of poetry with me on vacation and sitting down somewhere and but hearing it and experiencing it is a whole nother level.
Yeah. So like, has there ever been a moment in your writing or reporting where you felt seen in a way that changed you?
That changed me. I think back to when I started working at the State News. It was in the wake of the Larry Nassar trials at MSU. And there was a lot of reporting going on to tell survivors' stories, and to not only expose what the board was doing and what the president covered up and what was happening on the top level, but like on the ground level. These are the students that are attending MSU. Yes.
For someone like me,
I wondered, let me help you out.
A soundbite, what are the Larry Nassar trials?
I'm hoping I remember enough of this. So Larry Nassar was a gymnastics coach for the Michigan State University women's gymnastics team. And it came to light 2018. I want to say it was 2018, maybe late 2017, that he had been abusing his gymnasts for years. Wow. And so Larry Nassar was a doctor of osteopathic medicine. So he was a sports medicine guy. So he was the physical trainer and the doctor to MSU female athletes. And then also from 1996 to 2014, he was the United States Women's National Gymnastics Team doctor. So that was his national position. And he used his position to exploit and sexually assault hundreds of young athletes as part of the, which I didn't know, largest sexual abuse scandal in sports history.
Wow.
So that was a big deal. So in 2016, he was arrested and charged officially with sexually assaulting at least 265 young women under the guise of medical treatment. Several of them were current students of MSU or former, and his trial was a big deal. Definitely colored my experience while I was there, because obviously coming from MSU, it puts the college in the news. It puts us, not in a great light. But these women were coming forward and sharing their stories and, how it impacted their athletic careers. And we got to do a lot of that reporting. And when you think about it, these are anywhere from 18 to 20-something-year-old women telling their stories. And 18 to 20-something-year-old people are writing the stories who work for the State News. I mean, there's students that work there. So I was 19 when I started writing for them, and we're writing stories about victims of sexual assault. And as, over 10 years later, I'm like, oh, wow, I did that as a child almost. You're just out of youth, you're a young adult navigating college, trying to be a professional writer, and you're trusted with the most sacred story I think I've ever been trusted to tell. And that was huge in developing not only my writing skills, but just my interpersonal skills. Yeah. With how to tell a story with care and with empathy. And that, hugely impacted the track of how I write and what I consider and how I conduct an interview and how I write my questions. Yeah. And I'm not always doing that much work for an interview. Sometimes I'm writing about something very technical and all the information is right in front of me and I have it all. But being trusted to tell somebody else's story is so powerful. And I'm trying to follow my train of thought there where I was going.
No, that's okay. Like, I really think that what you just said is you're bringing about a kind of integrity to the work that you're doing, but you're also honoring the experiences of these young women, and you were of the same age. Like, that can be really eye-opening to how wicked the world can be. Because, I mean, just judging based off of what you shared of him, it sounds like he was really respected in his field. Yeah. And to have this be uncovered as the biggest scandal.
Yeah, that's wild to read.
That is, well, and then also, then I really think about the women that are affected and that they have a community together, but how unfortunate it's under those circumstances.
Yeah, I think that year or the following year, the women of the Larry Nassar trials were named like Sports Illustrated Athlete of the Year or something like that. Wow. They did something as a community around that same time. And these women showed up to these trials. Like, the trials lasted for weeks. It was insane to follow and to watch. But they all came to tell their stories and to give their testimony. And to bury him in evidence.
Yeah. So, like, changing how, like, you know, to keep it on the theme of like changing you and your perspective as writing, like going from that point in your career to where you are now, what would you say is the one biggest takeaway that you still implement today in those experiences?
You never know what someone is carrying with them into an interview. It's as simple as that. I interview kindergartners on their favorite day of school when they are playing with blocks and learning to count with M&Ms on their desk. Yeah. And not a care in the world. And I've interviewed seniors for a senior profile, and their family member has cancer, or they've survived cancer. Wow. Or a family member has passed. We do this series every spring with School News Network called the Grads with Grit series, where we feature seniors that have gone through, have overcome obstacles or gone through really just out of the ordinary struggles to get to their diploma at the end of the tunnel. And it's not just about getting someone to answer their questions. It's about what you're doing here. It's about making somebody else feel comfortable talking to you. Yeah. And sometimes the questions are hard. You know, you don't want to ask somebody, oh, how was the day you found out that your cancer came back? Like, that. I've heard people in regular conversation enter with less tact. And I'm like, what? That you thought that was okay to say out loud? Like, did you not think before you spoke? And, you know, we always hear as a kid, you know, think before you speak. Like, if you don't have anything nice, don't say anything at all. But it's so much more than that when you're interviewing somebody for their story, for their experience, and you don't know how they're showing up that day. I don't always show up at my best to go conduct an interview. And there's just such a humanity to it that, you know, that's what makes good journalists, is that we're not AI. We're not robots. We're not there most of the time for our own gain. Yeah. You know, we're there to share the story of the person that has joined us. And obviously, you know, it runs the gamut of, you know, that reporting where you are interviewing survivors or highly traumatized people, and then the kindergartners with M&Ms. But I think it doesn't matter who you have in the room with you. You should still treat them with care and respect and patience. Because sometimes principals get phone calls in the middle of an interview and they have to go off and do something. I've followed principals through the schools sometimes to be like, oh, I have to go do this thing. Can you come with me? And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. Yeah. So yeah, having that flexibility and the adaptability, I think, is always taught with journalists. Like, you have to be flexible. Like, you have to be willing to go wherever you need to go to get the story. And that you know, that's pretty common practice. But having that empathy, I think, has to be learned and earned. I don't think that just comes in your...
It comes from embodied experience 100%, because it's really hard to understand what someone's going through if you haven't experienced it to some capacity.
Right. And you're not always going to understand.
Right. And you're not always going to understand. And that takes a whole nother level of connection and skill sets. So I really want to come back to The Sound of Honey Falling. Yeah. I just want to know, what's next for this? Is it coming out? Do you have a date? Do you have dreams for this on where this could go?
I have big dreams. I have big dreams for a lot of things. Yes. So I self-published this book, meaning I had a lot of creative freedom, but meaning I was also working off of my own deadlines, which are sometimes non-existent. So I have this this online programming that I was able to put everything in and put everything together. And it's really cool because once you upload the file, you can order a print copy. And so I actually got to like see it and hold it and figure out, okay, what are the formatting issues? Like, do I like the feel of this paper?
Yeah.
Do I like the size of it? So all of that I did this summer, and it's done, Theo. It's so done, and I'm so done with it. But every time I get a proof back, there's always something I find. A comma's out of place. My friend caught a word that, when you're typing in a Word doc and it doesn't tell you it's wrong because it's spelled correctly, but it's not the right. It looks right because you're reading it in your own head, but it's not the right word. Yeah. So I had a few of those. So my process right now and my timeline is just get it done to where the point I'm not going to find anything else.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I hit a button that says I'm done editing it, I believe it generates a link, and then you get to figure out, what that distribution looks like. So my dreams, I'd love to get it into some local bookstores, and I have friends who are telling me their connections and how to do that and how to go about that.
Oh, awesome.
So that's the dream. I have a friend, one of our fellow diatribe artists, Caleb, who goes on tour with his books to read, and I think that would be, I don't know if I have time to do that. Caleb does this full time. This is my side gig. So yes, in the short term, I will eventually have a link that's going to be on my socials and that I share with people, where you can go and purchase your own copy of the book. There will also be an ebook version. I think it's less expensive. I forget what the difference is there.
Yeah. Do you have a website, or do you want to share your social links or anything? How can people connect with you?
Yes. So I have a brand new Instagram page that is just for my writing. I was using my personal stuff for a while, and somebody suggested that I separate it. So the Instagram handle is a.c.s.poetry, because ACS poetry was taken. And that is where I'm starting to post photos and poem art that I'm making. And eventually there will be hopefully tons of buzz about the book being available to buy. And then as I'm reading it in places, I'm starting to take a beat from my social media influencers and take more photo and take more video places, so that I have that content to post.
I might have to have you come back during your as you're getting this word out and this buzz. I would love to have you come back, and maybe you'll have to read a couple
That would be really cool. That's what I'm, honestly, you asked what are my dreams. That would be the dream, is to read it
Theo's
to people.
Coffee break.
Yes, that is the dream, Theo.
Yes. Everybody wants to be at this coffee table.
Yes. I would love to do that. Right now it's just get it out there, get it available to people. Because I just started telling people that it was close to the finish line, because it was, and now I'm like, okay, you're going to lose them if you don't actually get it there.
It'll happen when it's meant to happen, and it sounds like you're so close.
I am. It's all on me at this point.
Yeah, and that's okay. So finally, before we bring this to a close, what is bringing you joy and or grounding right now in your work, creativity, in your spiritual walk? What kind of advice could we leave with our listeners today from you?
When I think of joy, I immediately think of my dog. My dog brings me a lot of joy. Rocco is his name. He turned 1 in May.
Aww.
He's the derpiest little dog. I love him. We're actually coming up on a year of getting him.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of joy. And then it is back to school, which as a kid and as a young adult brought me a lot of stress. But now being on the other side of it and actually getting to follow students and teachers along in their journey throughout the school year, my work ramps up when school goes back. So that is very exciting to me. And then my people bring me a lot of joy. And honestly, that is where I find comfort in my spirituality as well, is when I can be around my safe people, that we can have those conversations about what's on God's mind today? Can we talk about this scripture, this this parable that I read, but then also like, oh, did you see what so-and-so posted on, all the queer artists and musicians? It's like, oh, did you hear that new song? And so
That's so beautiful.
my people bring me a lot of joy, my immediate circle. And
your community.
Yes.
That's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, Alexis, thank you so much for joining me today. This conversation was exactly what this show is all about: being honest, vulnerable, grounded, and deeply human. You brought such a beautiful blend of intellect, artistry, and spiritual depth to the table, to which I knew that you would do. And I know our listeners are walking away with something to sit with, reflect on, carry forward, but also I feel like we all made a friend today. So thank you so much for joining the coffee table.
Thank you, Theo, for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So, hey, thank you so much for listening and being here until the end. Again, thank you, Alexis Stark, for joining today's coffee break. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow and turn those notifications on so you never miss an episode. And if this conversation sparks something in you, I'd love to hear from you as well. So send your thoughts to theoscoffeebreakpodcast@gmail.com. And who knows, I just might share your message or thought in a future episode. So take care of yourselves out there, and remember, you will always have a place at our coffee table.